Happy Monday, everybody, and welcome into the Gramlich and McLean podcast, presented by Ingles, the official supermarket of Gramlich and McLean. We'll do it live, Eric McLean. Here we are, recapping week 3 and recapping some winners. A lot of teams beat the teams they were supposed to beat, but perhaps didn't get some of those non-con wins that the ACC needed. But we did get Pittsburgh, who handled their business, Mac. That was really fun to see.
Yeah, it was. And when you were talking about winners, I thought at first you were talking about Underdog Fantasy, which you continue to win. And I am a loser. That's what I thought you were talking about. But here's the deal. We'll go through those in a second. I've got to flex. I got to flex more. I don't like to flex on people a lot, but I need to start flexing. And I will do that. I will do that moving forward 100% because it's frustrating, Kelly. I'm right there. And it's stolen from me. So I've just got to flex. Little less reward, but that's fine. It's fine.
We'll get into that after we talk our Big Four breakdown. When you say that it was stolen from you, I think West Virginia feels that way. So we will get into this backyard brawl. And we're also Florida State fans. If you're still with us, if you're still out there, we will talk about what in the hell is wrong with Florida State. We will also talk.
You don't have Kelly cussing on the podcast.
Would you say HE double hockey sticks is a cuss? I guess so. That's what Florida State makes me do. But we'll get to that. But Mac, there is a game this weekend in Tigertown that I'll be attending. And it's a noon game. So, those are always weird. Those are always weird when it comes to tailgate. But I've had a vision today. I'm going to make some delicious muffins for this noon game. Because I feel like you can tell me all about the meat, but this is what I'm going to do. I have a gluten-free muffin mix. I have to shop gluten-free for a member of my household. So that's what I do at Ingles, and they have a lot of great options. And I just think that that's going to hit well for a noon game. Maybe a little chill in the air, maybe some chocolate chip, blueberry muffins. I'm still debating. I'll keep you posted. But Ingles has all I need for this endeavor. Eric McLean.
Listen, I'm not picking on you. I'm very proud of you. You're tailgating. But when you said I have a vision and then the vision was muffins, I almost fell out of my chair. That's fun. We need some video of that. We need video of you getting the muffins, making the muffins, and then serving the gluten-free muffins, please.
Great.
We need that. I would like to hear about what everyone else is doing tailgate-wise, because I think noon is perfect amount of time to get after
really?
It. To make it happen. You just got to get up earlier. What, Kelly? Peel back the curtain. Tell people what you were like praying. Nick does not tell you what time you're leaving to go to Tigertown.
Oh my God. Well, before we had a child and had to, get a babysitter. I mean, for a noon game, I think other people do this with your tailgate group. You maybe have a boys' car and a girls' car, so the boys go early because we're not about that life. Right. So if it was up to him, I think he'd leave the house at 6:30. Legitimately, I think he would. But honestly, now
seems like you slept in.
Seems late. But now with a child, that's not. No. I'm maybe the girls' car will head out around 8:30. Just because the traffic.
There's strategy to this. You are splitting girls and boys.
Yeah, I'm not going that early, and I don't want to set up the tent, frankly. So
smart. I'm glad you have that opportunity.
There's a lot of things involved. Plus, I got to cook some muffins, Mac. I got to make muffins.
That's right. No question. All right. Anyway, we can talk about this for hours. We might have a tailgate episode where KG breaks down the muffins, all of that. That sounds really fun. But first, a message from our friends over at Ingles, and then we're going to jump into this because there's a lot to talk about. Here we go.
Did you know Ingles only sells USDA Choice and Prime cuts of meat? Maybe it's time to reward yourself. Our butchers cut all our meat fresh in the store every day. Grass-fed, organic, you name it. Not only that, we'll even cut it to order just the way you like it. And we grind meat fresh in the store multiple times a day. It's all in the bag. That's the best meat in town for the best folks in town. Ingles, low prices, love the savings.
Mag, you got to be a little more supportive of the muffins. Everyone loves the chocolate chip or blueberry muffin. Everyone loves that in the morning.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I would love for you just also after you make them, just share your homemade recipe with us. We would love to know what that is. That'll be fantastic. That'll be great.
Yeah. I'm going to put together. I probably need to put a cookbook out of all my homemade recipes. Okay. Mac and I record this late on Sunday. As you can tell, we're a little punchy. Let's get into these games. And let's start with the big winner of the weekend in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and that's Pittsburgh, Mac. Pittsburgh wins the Backyard Brawl, beats West Virginia 38-34. This was a really fun game. 3-0 Pittsburgh is not really what I had on my bingo card. They also have Youngstown State next week. So are we talking 4-0 Pittsburgh? I'm not trying to get too ahead of myself, but I think that's what we're talking. I love this offense, Mac. I want to get into Eli Holstein and just how he balled out, but I want to give you this crazy stat. Are you ready?
Come on.
And I had to look this up, and I missed a few teams, so I finally think the stat is good. It's done. Teams in college football with 2 Power 4 wins. Georgia, barely over Kentucky, Clemson and Kentucky. Notre Dame, they beat A&M and Purdue, even though they lost to Northern Illinois, who's now ranked, by the way. UNLV beat Houston and Kansas, both on the road. And Pittsburgh beat Cincinnati and West Virginia. So 4 teams that have 2 P4 wins.
Wow. So hold on. What were 4 of those opponents? Hit me with that again. For the UNLV, who did they beat?
Houston and Kansas, 2 Big 12 teams.
And who did Pittsburgh beat?
2 Big 12 teams.
The Big 12 sucks. All right, cool. Good to know that. There was so much talk about how great the Big 12 is. See you later. But yeah, that's fantastic. I saw something else where there was some crazy percentage. I think David Hale tweeted this of teams that had double-digit comebacks or something of that nature. There might be 4 in the entire country, and Pitt is 2 of them. Like, that's crazy.
That is crazy. Yes.
Unbelievable. So these guys, I mean, so much fight. We put up something on the huddle where I think it was a 1% chance to win the game at one point because it was so late in the game, and it was a 10-point game. I can't even remember how much time was left. Maybe 5 minutes.
It was about just over 3 minutes left because Pitt scored with like 3:10 to go.
Okay. Crazy. And they just come storming back. And again, a lot like last week that we discussed, a lot like Virginia, a lot of these teams from a week ago that had these comeback wins, it takes all 3 phases, like a blocked punt, turnover, stops, and then of course your offense has to score. And Pitt's believing right now. I mean, they're feeling really, really good. And the way that they did it, I mean, a bomb, like a 40-yard touchdown, and then to just march down the field, essentially walk it off, win the game, and then have a game-sealing interception. Eli Holstein is just so impressive.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit mad that Coach Narduzzi didn't give us a little more insight. I would have loved to have been boosting him all off season, but hey, I get it. We can boost him now. This dude is a redshirt freshman. We might have 3 more seasons of this, which is crazy. Would love to see it. Talking about Kenny Pickett type stuff if you keep growing and keep doing your thing. And then, just how about Coach Cade Bell calling up this offense, having the personnel, bringing in Desmond Reed. I mean, it is fun to watch these guys right now. And again, I think that belief word is a really big deal. And the momentum that Pittsburgh has is sick. It's a lot of fun.
It really is. And I give Pat Narduzzi so much credit because he's been at Pittsburgh for a very long time. He's a defensive guy. We know that. And obviously this Pitt offense just got really stagnant last year, was terrible from an offensive perspective. And he said, I'm not okay with this. I'm not just going to sit here and just do this all again. I'm going to go bet on something else. I'm going to go try something else. I'm going to go get someone from the FCS, like you said, who can, move the ball, but it's not a sure bet, right? But I have to go try something else. I can't just do this again. Yeah, he's young. He's so young. He's our age. Young, right, Mac? So I really respect that about Pat Narduzzi. He's not going to sit there and just do the whole thing again when it didn't work. And Eli Holstein is a revelation. And I think what's this is also proving, Mac, and we said this last year, Pitt has talented skill players.
Right.
They had them last year. You look at Kenny Johnson and Kanata Mumfield, but they needed a trigger man. Bartholomew is another guy. They needed a trigger man, and they found him in Eli Holstein. This Pitt team is so fun. Mac, did you know, I just looked this up, the Vegas win total for Pitt going into the season? Well, okay, I just saw it was at 5.5. Was it at 4 before the year?
I saw 4 somewhere. 5.5 is great. It's great.
5.5. And they're, like I said, they have Youngstown State next weekend. They could potentially start 4-0. I mean, what a start from Pitt.
Crazy. It's it's a lot of fun to watch. And as you mentioned, those playmakers, I mean, you had Kenny Johnson, who we had really high expectations for last year, but just didn't have a quarterback to throw him the ball. Same thing with Konata Munfield. Gavin, I really would like to see Gavin be more involved still. But, is what it is. Offense is doing their thing. But then to have a guy like Desmond Reed, who can give you 50-plus yards a game as a receiver, easily give you 100 a game if you want him to as a running back, and then as a specialist too. I mean, to just add the pieces that they did, really, really fantastic. And then, the defense stood up. I don't think we're not talking about the Pitt defense right now as world beaters or even reasons that they win a game, but they do enough at the right time to make it happen. I mean, you gave up 34 points. We're not celebrating, but you got a game-sealing pick, and you got a game-sealing, stop to get your team the ball back. So I'm fine with bend, don't break. I'm sure Narduzzi's not thrilled with it, but he'll take it. And, it's just one of those things that you find a way. And these are the cardiac cats right now, and Pittsburgh is finding a way. And I love to see it. And you mentioned Youngstown State. That's where Coach went to school. I think he started his career there. So this is the Narduzzi Bowl happening right here. And, excited just to see Pitt continue to roll and, just surprise people left and right.
Okay, I wanted to confirm it. Their win total before the season was 5.5. So if they win next week, already 4 wins. Pretty crazy. Speaking of Coach Narduzzi, what did you think of his post-game comments, Mac? We beat West Virginia and we beat the refs. I also saw on Twitter that they were Big 12 refs.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. I
Interesting.
hope that's right.
Should be. Yeah. Which is interesting, though, because he just got – yeah, well, they do – whenever you're playing somebody, the refs
in the
come
non-con.
Yeah, which is weird. I don't know if I agree with it, but it is what it is. But yeah, he just got fined too. Did you see that? He got fined $5,000 or something from the ACC.
That's what I love about Narduzzi, though.
It's fine. We'll pay.
He says what he thinks.
We're not paying, but we could if he wants us to.
I just love that Narduzzi, he tells it like it is, and I just love that about a coach. I appreciate it. So shout out Pitt. We had to start with Pittsburgh and their big win in the Backyard Brawl. Let's recap the rest of our Big Four breakdown, Mac. These were games that we thought the ACC had a chance to make some noise in the non-con. Now, we'll get to Virginia and Florida State's losses. Those were not great. But BC lost. They covered, by the way. We said that. I think that you don't win in a loss. But this was a really good showing for Boston College. And Missouri, are they the number 6 team in the country? They dropped to number 7. I don't know. But you go there. You have every chance to make something happen down the stretch. And I thought you overall had a good showing if you're Boston College. You don't want any moral victories. But we talked, we had Tommy Castellanos on. We loved talking with him. And he talked about how he had to be more of a game manager. Or that was something that Bill O'Brien was working with on him. And also just to make better decisions. He said post-game, he felt like he lost this game for his team. And I hated to see that for him. But the 2 picks were really costly. And I said this on our preview, Mac. I said, I really felt like Brady Cook was not going to make the pivotal mistake. You could not make him do that, and he didn't. He ended up making the right decisions, no picks, and of course Nate Noel was just a monster too for them running the ball.
Well, yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that, because I think if you look at the box score and if you watch the game, it just felt so back and forth. Like clearly, BC dominated the first quarter there, and then they gave up a little bit, and they start to get back at certain points. But if you look at the sheet, I mean, it's very similar with the things that they were able to do, but the turnovers was the biggest difference. I mean, that's where really started to separate. You couldn't stop the run very well at all. You had 49 rushing yards to their 180. That's a big deal. It's a big difference. And a lot of that, those guys clearly were throwing the ball more. But it just, it is what it is. And I think the picks really hurt you there. I think that's something where, again, you're trying to make a play happen. You're trying to make something happen. And there were some other crazy things that probably kept Boston College in that game. A snap rolling on the ground.
Yeah.
Tommy picks up and launches it for a touchdown. Busted coverage wide open, Kamani Morales running down the sideline for a touchdown. So there was some things back and forth that, it's interesting if both teams play a clean game. What does this look like? Is it similar, whatever? But the one thing I will say is I think it proved, and there again, no moral victories, like you said, but it proves we can play with anybody. We can play with a team that is top 10 in the
Right.
country at their house and go punch for punch and have a chance to win it, at the end. And I think that's a big deal. And they were literally a third down conversion containing the quarterback away from getting
Yeah.
the ball back. And who knows what happens? You're that close. And, it just goes to show you, kind of the veteran presence, as you mentioned, of Brady Cook, making the smart play, making the right play, making the clutch play. He did that time and time again, and just a really good job. But I am maybe, I thought they could win. I didn't think they were going to get beat by 16. I didn't think there was any shot of that. We both took Boston College with the number there, but I think this proved maybe even more to me. Okay, BC's on a really good path, and the good thing is they've got a massive opponent coming to town. Primetime, we'll be there. Red bandana game. Let's go. Can't sit around and think about, man, what we could have done. You got to get right back to it. So I think BC's got a really good deal ahead of them. Undefeated in conference play, all your goals straight in front of you and more. So let's roll.
Completely agree, Mac. Michigan State at home this coming weekend. I think you gained some respect, honestly, with how you played at Missouri. Win this game, beat another non-conference opponent, and then move on to ACC play. We should mention when talking about that game, Luther Burden was a monster. I mean, that guy, I had him in underdog. My 2 underdog picks for Missouri BC hit. So I was very happy with that. We had Castellanos higher than his passing yards, and then Luther Burden to score a touchdown. Come on. But the one that did not hit was Calandria, and we'll get to that. But I still think good things moving forward for Boston College. As we mentioned, they host Michigan State. Eric McLean and the guys will be there. So excited for that one. Mac, speaking of turnovers, that was the issue for Virginia. Maryland beats Virginia 27-13. And I have to say this, Mac, I told you last week I've kind of adopted Virginia as my team, one of my teams. And I was visiting family this weekend. And so we're watching college football with my husband and my brother-in-law. And they're watching Georgia, Kentucky. And I'm watching that too, right? I'm locked in. But on my iPad, I've got Virginia, Maryland. And they're like, Kelly, what are you watching? So I'm watching my Wahoos. Okay. I'm watching my Who's. I need to see what happens here with my Who's. I also had Calandria in the underdog pick. So there was that too. And I make it to the first half. It was a long weekend flying with my child. Yeah. I fall asleep at halftime. So I'm dreaming sweet dreams of a Wahoo victory. And then I wake up, Mac, and I think, oh no. So I go watch the highlights and I just see Calandria do what we thought he was past. We thought he was past these crazy turnovers and just these kind of playing like a wild man. And that's what happened in the second half.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was tough. Even the first half, I'm looking at the play chart here, defensive struggle back and forth. Virginia marches down the field, has an opportunity in scoring position, fumble. Then they get a stop. Okay, great job. Perfect situation. Next deal, driving down, pick, back to back. And you're just like, oh my gosh, drive all the way and then drive all the way down again after getting another stop. And you're like, wow, this defense is playing so good right now. Have to kick a field goal. On the goal line, can't get in. Have to kick a field goal. Punt. Virginia scores a touchdown. Maryland scores a touchdown. But it just felt like it should be 21-7 at minimum.
Yes.
At halftime. Like it was dramatic where you're like, okay, let's go. Let's get this going. And, a play where he's running around in circles, ended up getting a couple of positive yards. Next play, it's a pick. Even the touchdown, which is great that they scored going into half. There's 9 seconds left. We're like on the 10-yard line and one timeout. And he's just scrambling around like a wild man. Does get in, thank goodness. And you're just like, that wasn't the right play. I don't feel good about it. I know he scored. I don't feel good about it. And then, as you mentioned, after you fell asleep, the wheels fell off, and it was not good. And just
they missed me, Mac.
They did. I kind of blame you. I hope Coach Elliott doesn't watch this because he's going to know it was your fault that they weren't able to pull it out. So I guess kind of silver lining, again, as I try to always find with these games, it feels like if this would have happened to Virginia last year, they lose by 30. Defense really stepped up. I really liked what I saw from them. Physical, flying around, maybe ran out a little bit out of gas because your team's just a lot like Clemson in the Georgia game. Your offense isn't helping you, and you're having to be on the field a bunch. But But again, very similarly, when you get into these big games, KG, and you get into big time conference play, Big Ten versus the ACC. Let me read this stat sheet to you. Maryland had 390 total yards. Virginia had 300 total or 370 total yards. First downs, Maryland had 21. Virginia had 18. Yards per pass attempt, Virginia had more. Rushing yards, 5 yards difference from each team.
Mhm.
Penalties, Maryland had more penalties. Where's third down? I don't see it on here. Third down was very similar too, but there's turnovers. There's
Yeah.
4 turnovers that just killed you. There's nothing that you can do. You cannot beat a good team if you give them 4 extra opportunities. And so that was a bit of a disappointment. And again, I go back and forth on how hard I want to go on this because he still is such a young player.
Mhm.
But like this truly is losing football. Like it's hard to win when you're giving the team the ball. And that's what we saw last year a lot. And so he's got to grow up from it. He has to understand that there's a lot on him as the quarterback. Every decision you make, there's an outcome, whether it's good or bad. And you just have to eliminate those and just make the easy play, make the right play. You don't always have to go for a crazy home run or some exaggerated, just crazy thing.
Yeah, you're right, Mac. And I thought from that Wake Forest game, which was a big comeback for Virginia, that they were past that, but maybe not as much. And Calandria is only a sophomore, but now they have to go to Coastal Carolina this weekend, 3-0 Coastal. And that's a tough road environment on the green field. We'll see how Virginia bounces back. But I still think
Aren't all fields green?
turf on the
Turquoise.
the teal field. The teal.
Teal. The green field.
Y'all. It was a long weekend. Okay, let's get to Memphis, Florida State before we get to our speed round and run through the rest of these games. Mac, there are a few stats that kind of sum this game up for Florida State. Florida State's now 0-3. They lose to Memphis 20-12. You and I, by the way, went 3-1 in our spread picks in the Big Four breakdown. So
yeah, we did. What did we lose? Who did we lose? Virginia.
Silly. Florida State got bullied by Memphis. They were out physicaled, if you want to go with that term. They couldn't run the ball at all, which is what we said they had to do if they wanted to win. They had 3 turnovers. And I think the biggest thing for me, Mac, if you're just looking at stats, and then we'll actually talk about how it looked, because it looked even worse probably than the box score. Florida State had only 238 total yards of offense.
Mm-hmm.
That is unbelievable. That is, and Mac, Memphis, I think, has a shot at the playoff from the group of 5. I mean, this is a pretty good Memphis team. So I'm not trying to take anything away from Memphis. But Florida State was a preseason top 10 team, had just won the ACC, and now they're 0-3 and look like this. And I'm seeing Seminole fans talk about, could this be one of the worst teams in Florida State history when it's all said and done? It's just shocking, this kind of drop-off.
It's unbelievable. It truly is unbelievable. And here's kind of, let me just lay out the nearly impossible stat that blows me away. In the first drive against Georgia Tech to start the season, FSU rushed for 58 yards.
Yeah.
Since then, they have rushed in 2.5 games for 80 yards in 2.5 games. 80 yards.
What?
Here, I'll hit you with it. Hold on. Let me find
That's unbelievable.
Against Boston College, they rushed for a whopping 21 yards.
And they had 37 against Memphis. So, yeah.
37 yards.
Wow.
In the second half against Georgia Tech, they had 20. So, my bad, 70 yards in 2.5 games.
The point stands. The point stands.
It's unbelievable. It's horrific. It's a lack of effort. It is clearly a lack of execution, lack of want-to, lack of leadership. And I don't know what you even do from a coaching standpoint. EJ Manuel said it great on our show that Mike Norvell hasn't missed any tackles, hasn't thrown any interceptions, hasn't missed any blocks, hasn't done any of that. And I totally agree with that. And then Eddie's on the other side saying, well, Mike Norvell's putting these people in and he can pull these guys out and put other guys in. So we right now, we're at a crossroads. We're absolutely at a crossroads where and what's crazy is this is coming off a bye. Coming off a bye, you lose to Memphis and score 12 points and have 200 yards of offense. Like, it needs to be an unbelievable come to Jesus meeting. I'm going to stand up in the front room, probably cry, probably be emotional, probably be all these things, and ask, who wants to be here? Who wants to be here? And if you don't, please leave. You'll be on scholarship for the rest of the semester. All that's taken care of. Your NIL is probably going to stop, but you'll get what you already got. But please go. And we're going to work with who we have. And we're going to work with who wants to be here. Like, that's where I told you last week, everybody listening, that my hand is hovering over the red button.
Mm-hmm.
That red button is broken by how hard I'm smashing it. Like, it's not even there anymore. Sound every alarm that you can. And it's just like, it's honestly unfathomable, KG, just to see how quickly the decline is. And again, I don't think it has anything to do with coach. I've seen a ton of people saying all these things about he's not this, he's not. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. And I think there's a bunch of different reasons for why they are where they are. I don't think it necessarily is him at all. So they've got to figure it out, though, in an absolute hurt. And I don't know what figure it out means, because I'm looking at this schedule. Cal's next. That's a loss. At SMU, that's a game for last place in my power rankings in the ACC. Congrats, whoever wins that. Clemson comes to town the week after, probably obliterated. At Duke, toss-up. At Miami, lose by 50. Versus North Carolina, loss. At Notre Dame, lose by 50. Charleston Southern, win. Florida on Nickelodeon at 8 a.m. in the morning. I don't know who wins that game. Like, that's where you are. That's where you are. And it's crazy.
Wow, Matt. So that's crazy. What? Maybe a 2 or 3 win season.
That's literally maybe a 3-win team.
Gosh, it's just hard to, it's really hard to explain. Okay, so we had Bud Elliott on the show in the off season, and he does the Nullcast, Florida State podcast. And I've, listened to it throughout the last couple of years. And I remember listening to it around National Signing Day, like in February or March, the second National Signing Day. And he was saying this back then, that there's only so long you can build through the portal. Correct. A lot of times you can rebuild. So Mike Norvell took over a terrible situation, and in order to jumpstart things, he was able to rebuild through the portal. When you think of Jared Verse, Jermaine Johnson, these guys that he got. But at a certain point, you have to recruit high school as well. And part of it is you have to get guys that want to be at Florida State for 3 years or 4 years, that want to be that committed, that want to be the Eric McLean like he was for Clemson. Yeah. And to me, that's what Florida State doesn't have right now. It feels like they have a bunch of guys that want to use Florida State to get to where they want to go, but don't necessarily want to give everything they have for Florida State. Does that make sense?
100%. And I mean, you can use one of their own sons, EJ Manuel. EJ Manuel was there for 5 years. First round draft pick, there for 5 years. Probably one of the best quarterbacks in the country when he was recruited. I don't remember the numbers.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Played in every All-American game, whatever.
Remember, Nick Saban went to his high school to recruit him, so he was a big deal. He flew his helicopter in.
Dropped the helicopter right on the practice field. But guess what? He chose FSU. You got to have that. And I do, like, it is, as a Clemson person, a little comical to me, because everyone has just been slamming Coach Schwinney because he doesn't use the portal and he's only high school. And what's one of the first articles I see? Norvell has to use high school more. And it's just like, first of all, no matter what these coaches do, they can never win. Like, they're going to be criticized to the nth degree, no matter what happens or what they do, what path they choose. But it is a bizarre situation. And it hurts me. Like, listen, all these people in the podcast saying we're their favorite non-Noles, all these things, I have grown to really appreciate and like Florida State. But it's just crazy how drastic the turnover and changes. I mean, it is brutal. And I don't know what you do other than what I laid out, which is kind of odd and probably really tough and probably not what's going to happen. I don't know how you solve it, because you have no identity. I don't think you have a leader. I don't know who from a player perspective. Right. I think Jordan Travis leaving obviously hurt from a player standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint, and we couldn't have measured that. We had no clue how to measure that. So It's code blue. Look up code blue if you don't know what that means. It's way worse than code red, but that's where we
Okay.
are for Florida State.
Yeah, and they host Cal next weekend. Cal, they're 3-0.
They're going to punch them in the face.
It'll be an interesting game for sure, and we'll keep talking about Florida State. We'll keep trying to see what they can figure out, what they can do. But before we get to our speed round and run through some of these other games, talk a little Miami, NC State, and the rest of these, Mac, Underdog Fantasy, as we've mentioned throughout the show, is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. Use our code GMPOD, GMPOD, to sign up now for a very exciting offer of bonus cash up to $1,000, and follow along. If you want to win, you could look at some of my picks. If you want to have fun and go crazy, you could look at Eric McLean's picks. Mac, I won this week, but I only won 2 out of 3. Calandria, I think he was 8 passing yards under where he needed to be. You win some, you lose some, but I've got a lot of green on my app, put it that way.
A lot of green, which means wins, but also a lot of green, which means money. And again, I said this last week. I mean, honestly, the only way that we are operating right now as a podcast is because Kelly Gramlich is supporting me in all my endeavors and, of course, hers with her winnings on Underdog Fantasy. So you are the best partner. I am so thankful for you. Thank you. Thank you. Let me go through some of my picks because I thought these were locks. I felt really good, as I always do. But now we have some data and, who they were playing specifically. Like my losses, the ones that I lost to is slightly embarrassing because they're playing horrific opponents. And I thought it was a slam dunk. I thought I was worried about the other ones. But here we go. All right. So Kyron Drones playing ODU at ODU after, the little bit of a bumpy start. All I need is 190 passing yards. That's all I need. Thought that was easy money. Where'd we get? 176. Okay. Hurts. That's an L. And it ruined my whole day. It was over. It was over from that start. And, I got to use the flex. I will start doing that more now.
Do it.
I will do that. It's not as much money. It's okay. But, a little bit of reward there. Tommy Castellanos over 150 in my sleep. I mean, I thought it was a first half stat at first. Killed that. 250 passing yards. I don't like to be negative. But this was the easiest pick of the day. A running back, I'm not even going to say a name, a running back from FSU, under 57 rushing yards. Teammate rushed over 57 yards in 3 games. So that was easy. So I did that. Jordan Waters. I love that guy. Thought grand slam. Thought this was going to be a 150-yard game for him. Thought they were just going to really be mad up front, dominate. Just needed 70 yards, nothing big. Only got 30. Killed me. Just really sad. And then another running back playing an SEC team. Again, I don't like to be negative. His total was at 60. I knew that wasn't happening, and I won that. So I lost 2 of the 5, got 3 right. As KG always says, do less, win more. And one day I will listen to that. But as Kelly said, Underdog Fantasy, the easiest thing to do, go use our code. EJ Manuel just jumped on. He's on the train. He's in with us. GM Pod is the code, up to $1,000 of bonus cash there. You've got to do it, and just come play. Just make me feel dumb. Show us your picks. Show me how you beat me every week, like Kelly does. And I'm gonna get more reserved. I promise.
I thought you were gonna say that, as KG always says, do less. Period. Just stop it there. But, I agree. I sometimes just got to do a little less. Okay, speed round, Mac. Let's go. Miami beats Ball State 62-0. Cam Ward passes for 5 touchdowns. Miami had the big week 1, and then these last 2 weeks, they've flown under the radar. They've played nobody. That's great. They play at South Florida this weekend. I'm very interested to watch a South Florida team that gave Alabama some trouble at Alabama. See how Miami looks on the road this weekend. I'm really excited for that game.
Yeah, well, here's the deal. That game is like way oversold out. They're bringing in extra seating. Like, this is going to be the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl in South Florida. So I'm excited to see it too. And a bit of a challenge that, we probably need to ante up a little bit, on TV, on this podcast, and really understand, hey, this is the toughest game. Maybe they played all year. This team might be Florida.
For sure.
when you look at them and you see the things. But Cam Ward, again, continues to deliver 350 passing yards, 5 touchdowns. Didn't even need to take a rush, but he could have if he wanted to. Was really impressed. Like first half, I mean, he threw for 300 something yards in the first half. It was crazy. They couldn't run the ball. It wasn't good. They couldn't get any runs going, but they ended up with nearly 250 rushing yards, which I'm fine with. They did whatever they wanted in the second half. Scored 21 and 21 in the second quarter and the fourth quarter. So you're finishing really strong like that. And you just do what you need to do. This to me is the biggest difference in Miami right now is not only do you thump Florida and just absolutely embarrass them at home, but then you take care of business the next 2 weeks when you could be reading the press clippings, you could be feeling yourself, but they're just going to work and just doing what they need to do. So Cam Ward, now the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman. I think he just keeps staying healthy, keeps finding Xavier Restrepo every other pass. They'll be fine. Miami's looking really good. I'm very proud of them and excited to see where they can go. A little bit banged up on the O-line. Jalen Rivers hasn't played games. And as Cooper went down, knock on wood, praying, hoping those guys are fine because we need to be back at full strength on that offensive line. They're too good to have some pieces.
I did see that, and that worried me a little. But as we've said, I think South Florida is going to be a very interesting test, especially on the road for Miami next weekend. Mac, I put NC State in You Better Not for a reason, and you doubted me. But I don't trust them. And they beat Louisiana Tech.
I wish we could replay the clip of me just saying, what are you talking about? No way. No way.
I don't trust them, Mac. They beat La Tech 30-20. Grayson McCall goes out. You win, which is really what matters right now for NC State. Dave Doran not saying much about Grayson McCall. You still found a way in the second half. You were able to pull it together. But, Mac, I'm just so... And I think this is an understatement for most NC State fans. I'm just so disappointed in this team.
Yeah. Well, and that's how I certainly felt at halftime and was extremely frustrated and voiced all that. Again, couldn't run the ball in the first half. Couldn't do anything in the first half. It was brutal. I mean, you're losing by 11 points to La freaking Tech. What are we doing at home? I mean, what are we talking about here? And then, CJ Bailey, because of an injury to Grayson, gets his chance and comes in, throws a pick like right away. And we're just like, oh gosh, not good, not good. But then he figures it out, and his team absolutely had his back. Oddly enough, that like acted as juice. Like you thought it would be really negative, but it acted as juice of everybody saying, we got you. Like, come on, we have to do this. We have to come together. So really galvanizing moment for them, and thought he played really well. 24 second half points, went on a run. Defense made some big plays. Cade Fornham played with his hair on fire, had like 12 or 13, actually 11. I'm giving him too many, 11 tackles, which was great to see him flying all around. Thought the run game was nice. Again, you had a guy in Raphael step up, really be a great there, get a couple of chunky runs and end up with 60. Dakari Collins stepped up, was cool to see. I need more of Noah Rogers. I need more of KC, who got beat up a little bit and maybe had an injury. He did have 8 catches, but just not a ton of yards. They did a good job, good game plan on the defensive side, La Tech did. But I was inspired by the second half. Not blown away, not like, oh my gosh, here we go. But I was inspired and thinking, okay, this might get interesting. Now you see what an offense can look like with this guy. What's going to happen moving forward. So who knows? Really big challenge. We'll talk about this more all throughout the week as the Wolfpack head to Death Valley. Clemson team coming off a bye, coming off of the best performance we've seen in 4 years. So it's going to be interesting. That game is going to be one to certainly keep your eye on.
I wasn't as inspired as you by the second half. I mean, obviously, I'm glad NC State won. And I know you don't have your starting quarterback, but the idea of sending CJ Bailey, your sweet young freshman, 6'6", 190, into Death Valley worries me a good bit for NC State. But we're going to get into that game. We're going to get into that game a lot more on Wednesday. So NC State fans, just hold on. Just wait. Just wait.
Yeah, NC State fans, don't miss it. You'll love it.
Don't miss it. Okay, let's just go quick on the rest of these, Mac. Georgia Tech beats VMI 59-7. Any thoughts from this? Another good Georgia Tech they're 3-1 to start the year. I'm not sure any of us had that.
Yeah, fantastic. Explosive game. Did whatever they wanted. Threw it for 400 yards. Rushed it for 200. I mean, great to see them. Really just explode, get back on track, and get back in the win column, which we know is a tough thing coming off a loss like they did. Ole Miss, Wake Forest went about as I thought it would. Honestly, the defense played a little better than I thought they would. I thought Ole Miss was going to score 100 points. I figured they wouldn't be able to do anything much offensively. Anytime you see Wake Forest play a team of this nature with a big defensive front, that mesh just doesn't work. I mean, it gets blown up. There's not much that you can do, and it's hard to get going when you're going backwards, as an offensive line, and you're supposed to be going forward. It's pretty tough.
Are you supposed to be going forward? Okay, got it. I want Matt, of these games, Duke, UConn, Duke worried me. They found a way. If you want to give some thoughts on that one, or Cal, San Diego State, Virginia Tech, they figured it out at Old Dominion. They ran all over them. The game where maybe I learned the most, weirdly, was North Carolina Central. North Carolina won 45-10 because I think we have a new starting quarterback at North Carolina, and it's Jacoby Criswell, who didn't even play spring ball at North Carolina. Like, this is crazy. I think this little story going on in Chapel Hill is one that no one's really talking about. I mean, what a crazy situation. He spent 3 years at UNC, went to Arkansas, was literally playing spring ball in Arkansas, 5 months ago? And then Mac Brown mentioned it on our podcast, wanted to come back, wanted to come home. North Carolina kid, looked pretty good. Sounds like he might be the guy. Mac says he's going to play both. Mac Brown loves to play two quarterbacks. I think we weirdly learned the most maybe from this game this weekend.
Yeah, and I was interested where you're going to go, because what I learned is what I've been saying the whole time. And if you go back and watch any preview, any early show, I said the quarterback that can hand it off to Amarian Hampton the best needs to play. And that's the case. 25 carries, 210 yards, 3 tutties. I mean,
he was the guy. No, I mean, you're exactly right, Mac. But
whatever you want to do.
I did not have on my bingo card Jacoby Criswell being the guy for North Carolina by mid-September.
And here's the deal, too. Like, they have a bunch of weapons, right? They have a great tight end room, have some great wide receivers, J.J. Jones, Nate McCollum, Jordan Shit. Like, they've got guys. So I would like to see them be able to throw the ball a little more effectively and get somebody emerging. Maybe that is Criswell. And the crazy thing to think about, if Criswell never left, probably would be the bona fide starter, and there's a lot of hope and excitement going into the season. But he made the decision he thought was best for him, and, there we go. So you touched on Duke. That was almost embarrassing. They found a way, won the game. Great. Virginia Tech, I still just need more. They scored 17 in the fourth, which is great, but I don't know. I just higher expectations clearly. Love what they did defensively. APR went nuts, was on an absolute tear, and Cal looks good. I mean, no Jaden Knott, and still, running for almost 300 yards. Yeah, that was nice. So fun to see that, especially who they play this week. We already touched all over that. They're going to be fine. Fun week. Couple of disappointing things, some really fun things. I'm excited to get into conference play. I'm ready to see these teams play each other and start to figure out who the heck's going to be in Charlotte to play for it all.
No doubt, Mac. I think week 4 is going to be really interesting, and just want to shout out the listeners. If you made it this far, rate, review, subscribe. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. YouTube numbers have been awesome. We appreciate it. Use our code GMPOD. Follow my picks. I tweet them out. Is free money. Come on. I'm right there. I got you.
Like KG said, go subscribe, jump in the comments, tell us what you feel. I was a little emotional at some of these. Sorry if I got too emotional, but that's where I am with some of these programs. So we'd love to hear from Florida State. We'd love to hear from NC State, BC, riding high. Let's go. And, everywhere in between. Pitt fans, welcome back. Great to see you. It's been a couple years. We're excited to have you. And here we go. Anyway, subscribe. Help us out. OGs over on Apple Podcasts. Rate, review, subscribe as well. We would greatly appreciate that. But until next time, we'll see y'all.